So, hi everyone, welcome to the third speaker, Randi. I'm sure you all, um, saw her before either on Facebook or in real life. I'm not sure. Anyways, Randi came to Chabad, 16, 17 years ago, a while ago, right before Mushki was born. She had her life all planned, well planned. She knew who she was going to marry. She did marry him. She knew the names of her future kids. She knew how her wedding's going to look like. Everything was very, very planned. And then the nightmare of each parent happened to her when her baby was diagnosed. And they went through 5 years of not easy, and continuing to go through this journey, but in a different path of the same journey. So we want to hear some. Randi, just with a little bit of the conversations and the text messages, and from Sam, we spoke to Sam a few times, and I was just always very inspired by your story. So I was thinking, would love you to share some of it. So I'll give the mic to you. And thank you so much for willing to do this, Randi. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone who's here. See some familiar faces, so that's comforting, and I see a lot of black screens with familiar names, so that's also really nice. So to begin with, just to clear the air, I really am not good at these Zoom meetings here. I blog, for those of you that follow that. I vlogged Sonia's entire journey, essentially, and I'm much better at that because it's just writing and I post it and I'm not in front of the screen. So this is kind of nerve-wracking just for that component. But I have shared her journey. Hani took a little of my intro away. So obviously my name is Randi Zaila, and if you knew me in college, then it was Randi Traub. And Sam and I met at Chabad of FSU, actually, and Rabbi Orchman is the one that married us. And now we've been married almost 12 years, very close to 12 years, and we have 5 kids. So 4 of those are here living with us, and one of them, who's the reason behind this Zoom, is Sonzi, and she passed away this past February at the age of 4, shortly before she would have turned 5. So scrolling through my notes that I put on my Microsoft Word. Anyway, so I wanted to start. I had created a video for Sonzi for a fundraising video back in 2017, and we did Sonia Story, which is a nonprofit that we started to just kind of raise awareness for CDKL5 and to help further research for CDKL5 and just raise awareness for it in general. And so it was one of these videos that Sam and I kind of created, and it just turned out sort of awesome without us professionally getting it done. We just really were attached to the video, so we had wanted to redo it, but it was hard to keep that essence. And I wanted to share that video, but it's a little out of date with some of the statistics, so I managed to figure out a way to kind of adapt that video. So the video that I'm going to show is based off of that, so you're going to see a lot more of the younger pictures of Sonzi and some voiceovers, and then I did adapt towards the end. So I'm going to figure out how to share my screen, which I think is this green button. So I can hit share.
You dancing, Sons? Wow! Oh,
yeah, we hear.
I'm Sam, Sonia's dad.
I'm Randi, and Sonia is our 4th child. Shortly after she was born, she ended up in the NICU for some complications breathing.
I remember my wife saying, something's wrong with her. something's not right.
I just felt like something was kind of off with her. It took another 3 weeks after she was born for me to videotape some questionable movements and go to the Children's Hospital ER to have monitoring and get the actual confirmation that what I was seeing was actually seizures.
Just assume everything is going to be like the first three with relatively no problems.
About 3 weeks after we had her testing done in the hospital, I got a phone call from a neurologist that we had. I had just sent her an email that morning with a question about one of the seizures that we had seen and asking her if she thought they were these infantile spasms, which are a very severe form of seizures that we were afraid that she was going to have. And so when she called to say that she wanted to add on a second medication for her seizures, I thought that it was related to that video. And then at the end of her phone call, she said that she got some tests back, but she didn't want to discuss it over the phone. She said she knew that if I knew in advance that we would spend all our time online, and she didn't want us to see the information because just because we saw some things did not mean that that would be the path that Sonia would take. And we met with her, and she handed us a piece of paper that said that it was CDKL5. There were things written on there of what you could expect with a child with CDKL5. And I remember asking her if that meant that Sonia would follow everything on that list. And she was like, I'd like to think not. And then we left, and I went in the car, and I typed in CDKL5 online. That was when we realized it was a lot more than just seizures. The odds of her sitting independently are slim, and most kids don't. They're unable to live independently, and they can't walk, and they can't talk, and they can't take care of themselves.
The long-term prognosis for these children are not good.
It was extremely devastating to have a 8-week-old baby and see all these roadblocks and all the things that she wasn't going to be able to do. And then we were supposed to just kind of pick back up and carry on with life.
When you find out what you're up against, you're like, okay, well, this is a big mountain to climb, but we're going to do it. We're going to do what we got to do. Sonia really has taught us as a family amazing things that typical families would never know in a million years. 3-year-old even grasps the situation and really interacts with Sonia in a way that is just so phenomenal. And her brother, her older sister, wants to take care of her when she's older and really be a part of her life. And she said, have her move in. You know, when you see that as a parent, it makes you very proud. So while the negatives are severe, you have to look at the positives, the daily positives.
was a quick synopsis for those of you who didn't know the initial portion, I guess, of her story. And so, cheat sheet here. One of the things that I had mentioned in the video is that it was really difficult for us to receive that information of her diagnosis, and then we were just supposed to pick back up with life. And I've been asked how we were able to do that, and how were we able to just kind of put on that smile and you know, just live life almost in a normal, I would say, fashion. So to start, I wanted to answer that by sharing one of the quotes that resonated back with me in 2015, and it was right after her initial diagnosis with epilepsy, and it was just fake it till you make it, and we were just essentially going on autopilot, and that's really how much of her life was spent. You don't really, there wasn't really an option for us to do anything else, and we didn't really have a chance to kind of sit there and dwell. So we coupled our fake it till you make it stance with when life gives you lemons, and we paired that with like a triple pairing of dark humor, and that's kind of how I guess you would say we survived that. But initially it was just this huge punch to the gut to receive any information that indicated that here we thought we were having a healthy child and she was our fourth child. So you just expect that to be kind of the same thing. You're supposed to have a healthy child. And so first she was diagnosed with epilepsy, and then right after that she gets this CDKL5 mutation, so everything just goes from like bad to worse. And at the time we didn't really even know what CDKL5 really even stood for. We were just handed that piece of paper by a really well-meaning neurologist who was like, never seen this before, so here you go. Now I know, like, so on the right side of that paper, it says atypical Rett syndrome, and it says epileptic encephalopathy 2, I think it is. And so when I'd asked her if those were guaranteed for her to have, and she said, I'd like to think not, those are just other forms of what CDKL5 ends up representing as. So since he always had that epileptic encephalopathy, atypical Rett is just another name for CDKL5. So here we left the office thinking like, okay, you know, she's still going to be, we asked, like, is she still going to be typical? And she was like, well, you know, you got the diagnosis early on, so with therapies, it should still, yeah, I'm not going to say that she's not going to be. But they never said she's going to be, they just said, I'd like to think that she is going to be able to. So at the time though, when we researched CDKL5 and I went in the car, one, I immediately understood why it was that she didn't want to tell me that over the phone. Because I probably shouldn't have done it right in the car then either, because that was just a big slap. And at the time, there were only 600 to 1,200 diagnosed kiddos with CDKL5. If you caught in the slideshow now, there's closer to basically 2 kiddos diagnosed each week. So it's amazing in the sense of awareness that it's now on so many panels, and parents aren't waiting forever to get the diagnosis. But it's really hard, no matter what age. You're either waiting your whole entire child's life to find out why they have seizures and why they may not be developing typically, or you're like us and you start out when they're 8 weeks old, and so you end up with this hope that your child's going to be different. And so a lot of what happened with us is that we had this blind hope to begin with. So she was only 8 weeks old. Most of the kids in the support group were older. So we knew the diagnosis at such an early age. She wasn't 8 or 10. So we're just gonna hit the ground running, and she's gonna catch up on her milestones. We're gonna just, you know, throw money, in whoever will take it. And and she's going to end up being the outlier and live this normal life. So it was really hard to think otherwise, and so we had this hope. And then I was definitely more cautiously optimistic about things. But Sam, he called up, he found phone numbers of researchers, and he was on the phone sending anyone that would listen to him her diagnosis and her forms, and asking, like, what can we do? Can we get like a special medical marijuana card made for her epilepsy? Do you know of any treatments? What trials can we get her into? So we really had this thought that if we had tackled it early on, that we would just get her to be healthier and not have the effects of what a CDKL5 mutation does. So I had enrolled her in every therapy, and even if someone messaged me on behind the scenes on Sonia's story, I tried it. So I literally, and it's like ridiculous when I think back to now, like what I did. But this poor girl, someone had messaged me that if she takes this ridiculously high amount of fish oil, it will stop her seizures. Okay, so now we've tried all these other medications at the time. She was on these high doses of anti-epileptic. So when this person reached out and said fish oil, I reached out to our neurologist, and she's like, go for it. So all I can tell you that it did was make her completely smell of fish, and anyone that was around her smelled like fish. And it stained all of her adorable clothing that I was going to save for, at the time, I don't know, I think my sister had my niece, so I was going to be giving her all the clothing, but now it had fish oil stains all throughout the bottom of it. And no, it did not help with her seizures. But if someone messaged me and said it, my motto was, I try everything once. So we tried the fish oil, and we did try medical marijuana, and someone said that certain therapies would work for her, and so we paid out of pocket thousands of dollars literally a week to work on her rolling and potentially sitting. And P.S., when she passed away, she was not able to sit. So I can joke and say that was not money well spent, but like the point is we really threw our money at everything that we could to try and make her life better. And then basically it was after her first year and a half, like a little bit before her first, like right around the 15 month mark, I would say like from 12 months to 14 months, is when Sam was like, Randi, like we have to kind of reevaluate where we're at with spending the money on all these things, because it's not helping her, it's not enhancing her quality of life. And then on top of it, we started to get hit with this whole medical side that we were blissfully unaware of for the first 12 to 14 months of her life. And it was around that 15-month mark is when we took her into PCH after I had traveled to Florida to see my best friend, and we spent a weekend there, and she had been throwing up for this entire time for like 3 months. But it was there that I said on the way back on that flight, when I smelled like vomit for the last time, that I took her over to the hospital, and I was like, I can't keep smelling like vomit. And so we made her to the hospital, and we realized that she had significant GI issues. So it was kind of like all this had come to a head, and Sam was like, we need to stop spending the money on therapy because it's not really doing anything, and it's not going to fix her. And I think that was one of the most challenging things as a parent, is that you realize you can't. There's no way to fix your child, and so that's a really hard pill to swallow. And then you realize that, like, then you have this fight within yourself. I know for me, if I stopped sending her to these outside therapies, that then it looks like, or feels like, I'm giving up on her, which I wasn't obviously giving up on her. It's just her body wasn't able to do it, and there was no enjoyment from it, and so it didn't really benefit her. So even though we'd always had her best interest at heart, it was at that mark, after her hospitalization, that we kind of made us really shift our like hope and focus for her to just merely living her best life and focusing on her quality of life. So we just started to focus we changed our direction in our parenting, and I guess our hope kind of changed from finding her this magical cure that I kind of felt was not going to happen in her lifetime. Like, we kind of had to table that and just focus on how we could enhance her quality of life. And so that kind of ties into, I'm not sure exactly when I fully understood my role as her mother, but somehow during that point, like during it all, we kind of realized it was during that 15 months that she was in the hospital for 28 days that we realized that we were most probably sometime in our lifetime, we were definitely going to be burying her. And so I realized it wasn't about me at all. And so I did my best, and Sam, we both kind of, we never asked the why me or the why us question. I don't really feel like her diagnosis or the fact that she ended up passing from her diagnosis had anything to do with Samurai in terms of like a punishment. Like, you know, some people feel like, oh, what might have you done in your last life to kind of have that brought onto a child of yours. And so I never looked at it like that. I always looked at her diagnosis and her purpose in life or something that was just assigned to her soul, and it was to her body. And so our job, and my job specifically as her mother, was just to try and help her fulfill whatever her soul needed to fulfill, and for her to complete her mission. And so since even though I didn't ask why me or like why us, I did wonder why it was that she had to suffer. I didn't understand how God in general could just cause or allow, I would say, a child, nonetheless, and people in general shouldn't see this, but specifically a little baby, a child, to have so much pain and so much suffering. And in her short little life, she went through a tremendous amount of suffering and pain. And so it was really difficult for me to understand how that could be allowed. And I never really felt that no matter what potential positives of whether it was bringing people together or people hearing her story and feeling motivated or inspired, I didn't feel like that was enough justification for her to be allowed to suffer and seize in the manner that she did. So I don't think that as a mother I'm ever going to be able to recover from having to watch her go through all that. But I do understand that my job was simply just to help her achieve her purpose. And so that definitely was helpful in my parenting of her, was just to kind of focus on that as opposed to the situation that we were in. And then that concept of her achieving her purpose, and in general, people achieving their purposes, was a significant foundation in our house that kind of spread also to our kiddos. Because one of the most difficult conversations that I had to kind of interject with was with some of these two oldest siblings. So it was during that 28-day stay when she was 15 months old that I heard them bickering in the back seat. And so at the time, my oldest was 6, and our son was almost 5. They were 18 months apart. And so they were arguing in the back seat, and we had just left the hospital. I think I was taking like a turn in the afternoon to kind of go home. I went grocery shopping, and so Sam was just staying at the hospital during that time period. And I was like, what are you guys arguing about? And so from the back seat, my daughter was like, well, right, Ima, Hashem doesn't allow babies to die. And so it was kind of a pivotal parenting moment, because I wanted to hit my, save button, like help button, the red button, the easy button, to try and get out of that. And I I basically said to them, I didn't want to answer it incorrectly because it's very difficult with you have younger kiddos here, and I didn't want to tell them that she wasn't going to pass, because if she did, then I didn't want to be lying, and we didn't really know what was going to happen with Sonzi during that hospitalization. So I basically just said, like, everyone has a mission, everyone has a purpose, and you like to think that you're older when you complete your mission, but sadly sometimes there are babies and kiddos that are younger and they complete their mission earlier, and so they go to be with Shem at that time period. And so for us as a family, I think that made her journey, including her death, more, I guess, bearable for us, because we just kept it as more of a positive, that once her mission is complete, like, she's going to leave us. And so that was like a big foundation in our household, and I think it was very helpful for us. And one of the bigger challenges that Sam and I had was with her concept of the quality of life and making her life the best that it could be. We had differing perceptions on that. So we were fortunate, like around the same time, like around 18 months, I would say, like when we had our family epiphany of what was best for Sonzi. We had, I think that was when we started with her palliative care doctor. And so for those that don't know, a palliative care doctor is basically someone that helps, like, I should have written it down to better explain it, but it's someone for us that helps support your, I guess, medical decision making, and keeps the patient's quality of life, best interest at hand. And so it's kind of in conjunction, like palliative care then kind of turns into hospice in cases. So for us, we had this amazing palliative care doctor who knew what our lines in the sand were as far as her care, and helped us in more of the stickier situations to kind of maneuver them. And so with Sam and I, it was kind of a buffer, because she would always tell us that we want the same things for Sonia. We want the same end goal. We just have different ways of getting to that point. So like I'm more direct. Sam's kind of more of a, like, let's take the curvy way and try different things to see if we can get there. And I just wanted to get to the point, which is very much like my personality. So it makes sense that that's how it went. And for Sam, he needed evidence-based. So for a lot of decisions, he needed to see it. He needed to try it and then watch it fail and then say, okay, this wasn't maybe the best idea. And for me, I just went off of mommy gut. And so my mommy gut was always right with Sonzi. And by the end, that was very stressful for me, because I had a track record that was pretty solid with her. And so I was tired of allowing us, I was tired of having to play that whole evidence-based game to kind of prove the point. So it was about a year ago, 6 months before she ended up passing, that I kind of had this gut that things were not, they weren't going well, and that she wasn't, her time was nearing its end. And that was a challenge, because Sonzi was a master at hiding things. I would take her in and to doctors, and they'd be like, but she looks great. And then sometimes her lab work would be on my side, and sometimes it would be completely opposite, and it would show like a slight change. So I just was kind of working off of my gut. And so last year in August, or actually last year in June, when we were in New York, she got a virus, and it was a simple virus. It was, what a lot of people consider allergies, which I quote because I have a challenge with the allergy term, because it's a cold in most cases. And so for Sonzi, it ended up knocking her out for about 2 weeks with actual fever symptoms. And for feeding, it was a 2-month recovery. And then again, she got knocked down again with the same exact virus about a week after the first virus. And on top of that, we had lab work that came back that just showed that she was fatty acid deficient. And those labs were ran because she was on a special type of feeding. And so for those that might not follow her story, she was fed through her intestines. We had to bypass her stomach, and that started after she was 15 months old during that stay. And she was never able to recover to ever get back to her stomach working. And then in addition, we also were giving her feeding through a central line. So she had a port that we accessed, and she was given this total peripheral nutrition. We're wrong, but basically it was TPN and lipids. And so her feeds were, they were calculated by a nutritionist. So when we got this fatty acid deficiency, on top of her being sick, I had this light bulb go off that said, hey, something's not that right. But all of her doctors were like, no, we're just going to fix it by changing to a different type of fatty acid. And I was like, okay, but I feel like something's going on. And they were like, no, it's fine. So Sam wasn't even concerned. And so I compare his parenting and my parenting of Sonesy to the light coming on for tire pressure in your car. So you get that light coming on and it says that your tires need to be filled. And so I was actually driving Sam's car and it happened. So I can use this as a good example. So 33, 34 is where you want your tire pressure, and the tire pressure on the right front tire was about a 24. So like, okay, great, you can drive on that tire, but ideally you want to fix that bad boy up to being 34 because you don't want anything to go wrong, but it's drivable. So for Stonesy, her lab work was enough that like I was like, yo, we should probably actually figure out what's going on. And for everyone else, they're like, no, it's fine. It's just a little bit off. So it's okay. And so that ended up putting on a lot of strain on our marriage because Sam didn't see this warning light as anything huge, or he didn't want to see it. And I would say it's difficult when you're in this position. So like, I don't blame him for not seeing it, but as the mommy gut was playing this huge role, it was very difficult to try and make sure that we didn't cause her any unnecessary procedures or stress. And so palliative was a huge kind of assister in that situation. So we would kind of use them as our sounding board to decide what was a good idea and what might be better. And so I had kind of been pushing for her to go more on the hospice-y side of things, just so that we wouldn't be doing anything unnecessary. And so we had this big break in our I would say it was, I don't know, break is the right word. We just had this big challenge in our marriage over what was best for her. And we both wanted the best for her. We both wanted her to just have this great quality of life and to be comfortable. It was just we were having different ways of achieving that. And then so my biggest fear in general with her was just that we were gonna constantly cause her to keep suffering, and that was really huge. And I guess in a sense, I was thankful in the end that it wasn't either Sam nor my decision to end up putting her on hospice. I did spend a lot of time, like, praying to God and asking him, like, don't let it be our decision, like, kind of do this in a way that isn't going to rest on either of our shoulders. And I would say that our prayers essentially were answered, in that it just kind of came out of nowhere that in January when she spiked her fever, and we ended up having to wait. I would say it was like I knew before that concrete evidence came in, but Sam needed that concrete evidence to prove that her body was shutting down. So we did it. We did the lab work, and it confirmed that her body was it was tired. It had been struggling for a very long time. And so it was it was, I guess, a relief in a sense that it wasn't myself, and it wasn't a fight between the two of us to kind of have her go on to hospice and for her to pass in this, like, we agreed on that. We knew that we wanted her to pass around us at home. And so when it came to, I have to stop saying, geez, sorry. So when it came to that situation, it was better for all of us. And then something that developed over the last 6 months since she's been gone is how my belief in faith has shifted. Because when she was initially diagnosed and all throughout her life, I really struggled with all of her suffering, and I found it really difficult to have faith and to truly believe that there was a God, like I said, that would allow her to go through everything and not intervene to make it stop. And so, like I mentioned, there were times where I would kind of beg for her just to pass. Every night when I put her to bed, I would give her a kiss, and I would say I understood if she didn't wake up in the morning, because I knew how much, like, everything was going on in her body. And I almost wanted to just be peaceful for her in terms of not having it be like sudden, where I had to rush to Phoenix Children's Hospital and we had to make decisions of signing her DNR, like I do not resuscitate. I didn't want to have it left to any of that. I just wanted everything to be peaceful. And so now that she's passed, I would say that my prayers of her having this peace were answered, and now the only thing I have left is I can't even debate anymore about, like, feelings towards God, because it's really all I have left. Because one, she's not here, so if I didn't believe in something else, then I have no idea where she is. And as a parent, that's a very challenging thing to, just imagine, God forbid you leave your child somewhere and you have no idea where they are. It's hard to you can't really imagine that. But if you ever had that split second where you're like, oh, where are they? And you fear the worst and you're just not sure. It's kind of like that. Like, you don't know. Like, I have no idea what she's up to now or where she is. So I have to have faith. And I can't waver in it, or else then I feel even more lost. And in general, I know that she's in a much better place than she was here, because anything's better than for her than how she was here. So it was a lot of struggling over her life, but ultimately I had to lean into having the faith. And so I guess now I can open it up for questions, comments. You can just, I don't know, unmute yourself, raise your hand. I don't know how it works. I'm used to Teams. I'm not so used to Zoom. So if anyone has anything they want to ask or say, or I can just stare at pictures and some faces. That's also nice, Oh, I see that, Monica.
Well, I love you, Randi. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Randi, I just want to say to the last thing that you said. The Rebbe once told somebody that their son passed away. The Rebbe told them that they can look at it as if their son left to a higher, let's say there's a building with 2 floors. They're on the first floor and their son is on the second floor, and they can't see him, but they can send him presents. And the gifts that they can send him is doing a mitzvah in his memory, in his name, is, that's the gift that you can send to the neshama. So you're doing a lot of that. So you're definitely doing good for her. You did good for her when she was here, and you are continuing to do good for her and to parent her in a different way, in a way that nobody wants to. But, this is what I would say.
Randy, I'll just chime in and say that I think I feel very lucky, and I think that many of your friends would agree that you're, excuse me, you are inspiring on so many. Can you be quiet? Can you be quiet? You're inspiring on so many levels. Your writing, the details that you've posted about her life from beginning and up to this day are so beautiful. And unfortunately, you are not the only person who's going to go through something so horrible. And your beautiful writing and your wanting to help others attitude will be there to aid other people. And we should never know from it, but thank goodness that you shared your story so beautifully to the world, because people will benefit from it. We all have what to learn from you, and so you're awesome. You're amazing, and I love you.
Thank you. I love when faces pop up. It gets exciting.
Hi, Randy. This is Erica.
Erica.
We met once at FSU. I don't even know if you remember me, but you had just graduated and I had just joined. So I'll have a comment and then a question. So first is that I've been following your story for years, and I'm with you all the way, and I'm so sorry for your loss. So it's been really nice to, not nice, but it's
okay
to hear the part of your story, about your faith, and it means a lot. It's just really, it's really touching to hear. I followed your story and I've heard a lot about her, the things she went through, but I never really heard much about the, your spiritual side of it. So it is really, incredible. I did have a question. I wanted to ask you about when you have one child that takes so much of your energy, you're one child that is so different from the others. How did you go about, balancing with the other ones and not making them maybe feel like, it's all about this one child? Just wondering about how, they all balanced together. It seems like they were really involved, in a good way. So just wondering about just how that kind of works.
So right off the bat, and maybe it was because of my oldest ages. So Leia was 5. She had just turned 5 when Zonzi was born, so she was the oldest. And then we had Svi, who was 3.5, and Nina was not even 2 yet. So I had these 3 kids that were just kind of obviously all 4 of them were starting together. So I don't know if that had helped, but we kind of just right from the beginning, we were very open and honest with them. So they all came to the NICU and saw her. And then when she went to Phoenix Children's, there was a lot of divide and conquer that occurred with the family. And so we were always upfront with them. So when and we use Child Life like to help us at the beginning with things with the kiddos. But at the beginning, actually, I have it in here. I'll go grab it 1 second. So, I mean, I still have some of her stuff, or all of the stuff I didn't get rid of. So when she was first diagnosed as a baby, the Child Life team had made, this was her EEG hat that someone had made for us, because I was really like not cool with her just like going like this. We put bows on it at the beginning, but I was like, that's not gonna work for her, so we had to make her a bear hat. Anyway, so the Child Life had made us this bear, and we presented it to the kids so that when they came up to the room and they saw her with all this gear on her, they weren't going to be freaked out. And so we were always open and honest with them, and then that facilitated the conversations. And so we made it so that they could ask any questions, and they would be, we sometimes had to take a second, like a breath with some of their questions, just because they would kind of catch us off guard. But in terms of actually the day-to-day taking care of her, Sam was, we were very fortunate that he had actually, when our second was like about 6 or 7 months old, he changed his job to basically work just completely for himself. So by the time Sonsi came around, we were very fortunate that he was able to work remotely. So I spent a lot of the time in the hospital, and Sam kind of became a single parent at home with the other three. And so every hospitalization, I would go with Sonsi, and he would be with the other three. And that's kind of how it worked for her, essentially her entire life. I think twice ever I let him sleep over. If he's still on. I was gonna say like twice ever I think I let him sleep in the hospital, but he kind of like, he got those privileges revoked like one time. So but it worked in that regard. The on that note though, like it sounds like, oh, okay, the kids, like yes, they're I would like to say they're well-adjusted kids. We've heard that from other people. The challenge is though, I lost out on a lot of their earlier lives. So I kind of, for me, it's this weird thing, because the first year of her life, I spent a lot of it in the hospital, and and then it went on that way for a good 3 years extra, until her last year, where we didn't really stay too many nights in the hospital because we just said we're not doing that anymore. And so they stopped needing me. Like I used to be the one that did bedtime and story time with them, and then it became Sam. And so it didn't matter if I wasn't home or not. If I was at the hospital, they didn't ask for me anymore. So there was, there's a sacrifice that you make when you have a child. Like I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. Like she needed me to be there with her. I wanted to be there with her. But it did mean that I missed out on a lot of like the first, like I feel like now I'm making up for all the time that I missed. Like Leia's 10 now, and for 5 years, in a sense, I was kind of absent from a lot of her things. Like I didn't make it to, I was actually about a week after, it was right after we had gotten it from Shiva, after Sonsi passed. Nina, she was in first grade last year. She had a presentation at school, and so in the past, I didn't make it because I was with Sonsi, I was dropping her off at school, or she had a doctor's appointment, and so Sam would be the one that would go, and it was in my phone, and I missed it, and I was so upset because I didn't even have an excuse anymore to miss this presentation that she was doing. But the sad part was, besides that I was angry at myself, was that it's not like it wasn't like a negative she didn't miss me. It was that she was so used to me missing out on these types of events that she didn't miss that I wasn't there. Like Sam was there, so he was, that was all they needed. So right now we're in this like weird phase where it's kind of like we're rebuilding. Like I'm kind of learning my kids and rebuilding the relationships, because she did take such a significant amount of time that I did miss out on their lives. So it's trying to get that back, and then at the same time it's hard to do that because I don't have Sonsi here, and that's why I'm not doing it. So it just becomes this whole like weird difficult, challenging mental spiral that I go through. But I'm trying to make it where, like, you know, they actually wait for me to give them a kiss before bed. Like, I try and race in there to do it because I can do it now, and they should want me to do it, as opposed to just expect that my schedule might not allow for it, if that makes sense. Because Sosie's life was really unpredictable. So I'd be there 1 minute, and then the next minute, after dinner, we were in the car going to the emergency room. So it was tough, and so it's tough now.
Yeah.
Changing
Yeah,
it back out.
that makes sense. I think. Thank you so much. And yeah, again, I'm
Thanks for
so
the question.
sorry. So sorry for your loss. And she was really wonderful. I love all her pictures and everything.
I appreciate you following. So thanks.
And hi, honey. I'll go back on mute.
Anyone else? Just like Bueller, you know. Connie, I know you said you had it on live on Facebook. Did anyone type in questions there?
I'm checking my phone now if anyone
Okay.
read privately. 1 second. I gave a few options. Okay. 1 second.
I like that, Karen.
Are the kids asking about her now?
So that's a weird one. Our 2-year-old stopped, like, after at the funeral. He saw her picture, so he stopped coming into her room and asking for her. He's 2.5 now, so he will ask. He'll go to, like, Sam or myself on the phone, and usually Sam, because Sam's the one who plays all the videos, and he'll say, Sonzi, watch Sonzi. And so he likes to watch videos of Sonzi. I did give him a book of their time together, so I'm hoping as he gets older, like, he likes to kind of carry it around or just make sure it's there, but he doesn't necessarily like to look at it. He goes back and forth with even having it around. Like, sometimes he wants it in his bed and sometimes he doesn't. And I don't know when he asks for her, if he knows now. Like, we basically made it clear at the beginning when we went to the cemetery, we made it clear that we were going to see Sonzi's grave, because I didn't want him to be confused and be like, oh, we're going to go see Sonzi all of a sudden. So now he kind of just says, see Sonzi, go to the car wash, because it's kind of like a routine that we do. We go to Sonzi and then we get the car washed. And so I'm not sure if he's really asking about her. He's made a couple of interesting references where he's, like, pointed to the sky and he'll say Sonzi, and I'm not sure what's really occurring in that case. It's kind of one of those, like, okay, are you seeing her, or you just want to talk about her? My older kiddos, my oldest, she'll occasionally bring, I would say the first month no one brought her up. She will occasionally, I wouldn't say bring her up, she may say, like, oh, I miss her. But it's more of, I will find her in, like, I'm in Sonzi's room right now, so I'll find her in here with, like, I don't have the sheet on the bed, but if there's a sheet on the bed, she'll come and sleep in the bed, or she'll go find her blankets. And everyone has, like, Sonzi bears. Like, we have these bears that someone out of Sonzi's pajamas. So each of the kids has a bear, and so they carry those around a lot. And that's kind of, we have them in, there is now a kids portion of the support group that we're part of, so they participate in that, but they like to tell me that they're like, oh, we don't really need to go, there's nothing to talk about, it's boring. So I'm not really sure. It's it's difficult. Their ages are difficult, and I don't want to make everything about Sonzi when it may not be about her. But I try and foster if the conversation comes up, like if we're just like, oh, we miss her. So that's kind of the extent of it. I wouldn't say they really do more than just that.
Okay, I have another one.
Okay.
During the time of her diagnosis and also after she passed away, how do you keep going about your life and smiling when all you want to do is cry?
Oh, that's there was a lot of crying. There was a lot of crying. There still is a lot of crying. It's one of those things where like I blog, like, so the blogging really helps me because like I get a lot of people that say I'm crying when they read the blog, and I'm like, I was crying when I wrote that same blog. So it's helpful for me to just kind of get all my thoughts out. And then it's easier for me to kind of shelve the rest of it. I do a lot of like compartment. I can't say the word. I say it in my head, but compartmentalizing or whatever. So I put it in little compartments because my English is not working tonight. And I'll save it for later. So like I've gotten better with kind of sitting with my grief now, I'll say. And so when you get a diagnosis like CDKL5, there is a grieving that you go through then also. So I feel like I've been grieving for a lot of her life. My initial grief was over the fact that I wasn't going to have this typical child. Like I thought that I was going to have this typical child that was going to grow up and get married and move out of the house. And then I found out that wasn't going to be the case. So I had to grieve that. And what I'm finding in my grief of her absence now is that I'm still grieving the initial grief. So I get very confused sometimes what I'm actually bothered by, because when I start to like sit around and I think about, oh, I wish Sonzi was here, I don't even know what Sonzi I'm wishing was here, because I would never want her back to suffer. So we watched Onward, the Disney movie, and it's about a father that comes back, or they're trying to have their father come back for 24 hours. And so it was through our support group, and one of the questions that was asked the families to consider was, would you want your loved one to come back? And so both Sam and I were like, it depends. If she's coming back as Sonzi without CDKL5, the Sonzi that we didn't really ever get to have in the first place, sure, I would love to meet her. I would love to get to know her and have her come back for 24 hours. So if it's this new and improved version of Sonzi that's going to come back, great. But if it's going to be the Sonzi that we had, I wouldn't want her to come back to suffer. So there's a lot of levels of grief that went along with the diagnosis and then now afterwards. And so there's still a lot of crying that goes on. And I do my best throughout the day to just kind of smile and pretend that like life is hunky-dory. My closest friends get the texts that are not necessarily, like it's like a vent here and there where I'll just be like, I'm just going to share this fun fact, and then I kind of shelf it and I move along. Because I can't stay in that place too long, because it's not really healthy, and it's not beneficial, I guess, to wallow. Especially after like her diagnosis initially. Sam and I had like a really bad first day. And then after that, we just kind of hit the ground running with trying to figure out what we could do for her. I would say that was easier to deal with than the loss now, in the sense that there's not really a distraction. So now we don't have the chaotic life. Like we went from this chaos of having to work around like random hospitalizations and doctor's appointments, and just the chaos of the spontaneity of CDKL5. And then we went to literally like, she's gone and we have all this time, and there's more time, I guess, to wallow. But I try to not do that, because I don't like to feel the sadness. I know that it's healthy to do it, so I allow myself to do it, and that's what my blogging is for. But otherwise, I kind of just push on through and try to make the best of situation in the day.
Okay. Randi, thank you very, very much for willing to talk about it when everything is so raw and so shortly after.
Thank you all.
Okay. Have a good night. Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Randi.
Thank you.
We love you.
Thank you,
I
Randy.
love you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.